Okay, welcome back everyone. It's 5/20 of 2015. We're going to take a look at the second teaching by Lacocque on the doctrine of the covenant of the law. He wants to take us through three moments. The first is the covenant of law as written documentation, as the Torah. And it has basically five basic aspects. It does elevate selfhood. Mesopotamia was very prevalent, their law system, and it did not elevate human life, but unique to Israel, human life is considered sacred, so there's an elevation of selfhood. The covenant is narrative informed. Historical narrative actually gives the covenant between God and Israel its core meaning. It is an ousia essence-based covenant because the law is based on God's essential nature, which was really unique because in some of the other cultic religions, the gods are warring gods, or there might even be evil gods. But this covenant of the law is actually ousia essence based on God's essential nature. There's a desire for correspondence that becomes the motivational base of attestation. Our motivation, the Jewish motivation, was actually to correspond to the divine nature that was revealed in the Torah. So the Torah became the actual embodiment of covenant. The written Torah became the embodiment of covenant as a substantial historical presence. Historical presence as embodiment of covenant. Now, the five key aspects of this embodied covenant. It has three main categories: civil obligations, moral obligations, and cultic obligations, or secular law, wisdom law, and priestly law. Ethics becomes prioritized. Love of God is reflected in love of neighbor, so an ethics of reciprocal love becomes prioritized. It is attestation-based. The codes are fundamentally testimony. They are fundamentally motivational testimony. There is an unwritten essence. There is an aspect of the law that is beyond the letter of the law. There's an essence behind the actual literal letter of the law. It does become universally applicable. It is actually in possession of a character of universality. It is a covenant that points beyond Israel. It is Israel's covenant, but it's Israel's covenant to go out of itself and represent the divine to the world. So it's a covenant with Israel, but it has a character of universality. Now, after written documentation, Lacocque wants to talk about the shift in historical identity for the nation of Israel, especially after the Deuteronomy school. There were 8 aspects of this new self-understanding for the nation of Israel. Again, it became ethical. There was a non-cultic wide scope of application that emerged. Selfhood was elevated. There was an orientation toward the laity and toward selfhood, and not simply the elite priest. It was words-based. The law was not called the law. It was called the 10 words. It was a language emphasized. The law actually was a content of signposts, so signs are emphasized, and love prevails, not prohibition. Even though there are prohibitions listed, the overall context is an atmosphere and a context of love. It is anticipatory, and that reflects the Deuteronomy school, which was the school, again, remember, that took up the law at the end of the wandering in the wilderness, just prior to entering the promised land. So it was an eschatological or anticipatory type thinking in the Deuteronomy school, one of anticipation and confirmation. The Torah is a prefigurement. It actually is an embodied prefigurement in language of God's future. And it is a self-manifestation. The Torah equals God's self-manifestation in history. So you've got a written Torah that equals God's self-manifestation of His revelation, of His essential nature. And so now Lacocque says, once we have the written documentation of the embodied covenant, and then we have the that embodied covenant affecting the nation of Israel and causing a true shift from cultic to non-cultic and becoming truly ethical-based and ethics-centered, we now can understand what divine right means in regard to covenant. What is the meaning of divine right? Lacocque tells us that the written documentation and the non-cultic shift is combined into a divine right of 15 attributes. So the result, the consequence of this written Torah and this shift in historical identity results in a covenant of divine right as 15 attributes. It is eschatological. God sees Israel as accomplished. It is honor. It is the 10 words as a task of honor. Not prohibitions, but 10 words as a task of honor. It is seen. The divine right means to be seen by God as His own. As triad, it includes the task of honor, the identity in honor, and the being seen in honor from God the Creator. As promise, law is prefaced by "you will no longer be," and so that's the way we should look at the commandments, the Decalogue, according to Lacocque. Just to interject a prefatory line, "you will no longer be," so it's actually a document of promise. It is positive with regard to content, and Israel is told what it means to be a free people, freedom to become an ordered life. Now what that means, it means transcendence, because freedom means transcendence over the desire of sarx, the desires of finitude. Israel can now possess a transcendence over that base desire of finitude and sarx. It is an articulation, but the Decalogue is an articulation that combines the indicative and the future. It is very much eschatological, so it combines indicative and future. It is an obedience because liberation always includes the obedience to a transcending attitude of overcoming the desires of sarx and finitude. It is based on recognition, and it comes from a Greek concept of paraineo, and paraineo is unique because it is not simply the objective string of imperatives, it is the objective string of imperatives coupled with a subjective aspect of true recognition of the covenant God on the part of Israel. So it's the string of imperatives coupled with reciprocal recognition of conviction, or what we know as attestation. So it's imperative plus attestation, I plus I. Imperative plus attestation, I plus A. The motivational base of attestation. It is an invitation to recognize God as the Yahweh God of covenant. It is knowledge, recognition type knowledge. The 10 words becomes a pathway to a knowledgeable recognition of God as Yahweh. Selfhood becomes exalted in the command, "Thou shalt not kill." That is an emphasis on the sanctity of human life, which is fulfilled later in Christ in Matthew 5:21-26 in the love of the enemies exhortation by Christ. So we get very good content here, very solid content. It takes us a little further into Lacocque and his understanding of the Hebrew idea of the covenant of the law. It becomes so much more because it becomes very much language-centered, but it becomes language-centered as promise. It's a promise of covenant that becomes an embodied presence in history as Torah. The promise the divine promise of Yahweh is incarnately present in history as an embodied Torah linguistic document. And by interacting with that Torah documentation, which is the embodiment of covenant, the Jewish people progress deeper and deeper and deeper into depth of understanding and actually go through a shift of identity at a very fundamental core level from cultic to non-cultic. And non-cultic in the sense that they're more wisdom-based, which means they are more morally or ethically based as an identity. And that means that the Torah is a collection of signs. It's a collection of signs that point to the kingdom and the covenant. And therefore love prevails, and the Deuteronomy school completely conditions the people of Israel and helps them to make this transition from cultic to non-cultic. That results in the new list of attributes for the nation Israel. The new list of attributes is taken up as a doctrine of right. So the new collection of attributes becomes the new nation Israel doctrine of divine right. The doctrine of divine right takes up honor, the being seen and named by God, the promise, positive content, the definition and the exhortation toward freedom, an order that is immersed in a transcendence to overcome the sarks of finitude, an articulation which is eschatological, and then obedience that takes up transcendence. And all of that leads to the gift and the dialogue of recognition through participation. The nation is invited to participate, and through participation gains knowledge and recognition. And of course, eschatologically, that means that their own identity and selfhood becomes perfected and exalted and moved toward perfection. So great little lesson, again, from Lacocque. This is his second section on the covenant of the law. We'll pick up from page 91 next time.